229. Let's get to The Black Phone from 2021. It's directed by Scott Derrickson, stars Mason Thames, Madeline McGraw, Ethan Hawke, Jeremy Davies. And the synopsis is, after being abducted and locked in a basement, a boy starts receiving calls on a disconnected phone from the killer's previous victims. Well, this one was a first time watch for me. I had been meaning to get around to it for a while. I had heard fairly good things, surprisingly good things about it. And overall, I thought it was solid. I did have a few issues that I could see going away over time and the movie getting better and better. One of the best things about it, though, Scott Derrickson, who also did the first Doctor Strange, the atmosphere, the direction in this is very consistent. That very unsettling, mysterious mood and tone to it. It's shot really well. I know they did a lot of Super 8 formats with it and a lot of very traditional styles of filmmaking. It almost looks like home video at times, very 70s, 80s, but as authentic as I feel like you could do at this point in time. On top of that, nowadays it's pretty hard to create a iconic horror character that hasn't already been established, and I think they do that very well with the Grabber, which is played by Ethan Hawke. Him being this serial killer of children, for one, and then a kidnapper, which is how everything gets started, and he just goes around in this black van, lures kids into it, and he takes them away to this unknown home. All the sequences of the kidnappings are very effective and very chilling, and it's very subtly done with someone just getting out of a black van in the background, or you just see the van taking a turn towards the children on the street. But more than any of that, the design of the character is fantastic. The white mask that covers his whole face, the hat, the very everyday clothing, almost looks like a librarian or something. The sweaters and checkered plaid button-up shirts and stuff that makes him look very, in some ways, humble and non-threatening, juxtaposed against the super creepy mask, and then how they change the look of the mask and what part of his face is covered throughout the movie. Like sometimes he'll just have the bottom part, sometimes just the top part, or other times all of it. It just feels way more thoughtful in that construction than you usually get nowadays in horror. Performance-wise, very good across the board, especially the kids. You never really know with kids how it's really going to be, but I think everyone is well cast, especially Mason Thames. Ethan Hawke, such a great actor. He has such a wide variety of roles and a very underrated character actor, in my opinion. He's able to play that villain well, to where it's a little theatrical, it's a little exaggerated, but not so much that it becomes goofy or unrealistic. Like, I can buy that he was a real guy in this. My main problem, which, as I said earlier, it could change on rewatches, the supernatural element of this, which is mainly the black phone in the basement where the kid is trapped. He gets calls from the previous victims of the Grabber, and they say, hey, this happened to me, I made this mistake, I left this piece of rope behind, or this didn't work, this worked, etc., etc. And through the power of numbers, which I think is one of the main ideas or messages of the movie, he's able to, spoilers here, he's able to escape. which I haven't really seen something like that before done in this way. And I thought it was done very confidently. So I was never really second guessing anything. It was frustrating though. Maybe I'm in the minority. I'm not sure. But I didn't love how it would seemingly switch back between being set in reality to being supernatural. Because for the most part, I guess aside from the sister of the main boy, everything is pretty much set in a realistic setting. But then it would switch back to the sister having these visions, and then again the phone calls from all the ghosts. So I kind of wish that it had chosen one or the other. And while I don't need them to explain the logic of the ghost phone calls, it felt sort of out of left field, and there was never really a resolution to that. I like the ending, and I appreciate that more and more these days, horror movies, especially when it comes to slashers, serial killers, what have you, it's becoming more and more about the victims standing up against the evil. Like in Halloween, for example, or Scream. And then in this, you see these characters are not helpless anymore. I mean, they might be at first when they first get attacked or anything in that realm, but by the end, typically, they are standing up for themselves and they're getting the right support group to help them with that as well. And that's a very refreshing, empowering message to have in movies that don't necessarily have to have that. They're low budget, violent, dark movies that could easily continue the trend of the classic slashers of a bunch of helpless, innocent people get killed, movie over, basically. And that's fine sometimes. Like, there's nothing really wrong with that, but I appreciate that there has been an evolution of those ideas and of those character arcs, even in just one movie, not necessarily a whole franchise. Besides that, everything with the brother of the grabber and him being obsessed with finding out who the grabber is and not knowing. The sequences of the boy getting out and getting up the stairs and then seeing Ethan Hawke just sitting there, usually with his shirt off, with his mask on, and staring blankly at the doorway, or sometimes he falls asleep or breathing really creepily. It's something that could easily be laughable and takes you out of it, but I don't think it ever comes close to that. When the boy does, at least for a moment, escape, and he gets out the door and he's running down the street, but the grabber's able to get him, and he puts his hand over his mouth and he waits for all the neighbors who heard the commotion to turn off the lights, and then takes him back to the basement. The score by Mark Corvin is very good. He did the score for The Witch and some others, a very good composer. The relationship of the family of the main boy with the alcoholic father, who's turned into a very abusive drunk and very incompetent in handling his kids' problems, especially the daughter, who he can't understand why she's acting the way she does. And, I think that speaks realistically, because there are plenty of people out there who their kids may be going through a change, maybe developing something mentally, and they don't understand, they don't know how to deal with it, they're scared of it, whatever. I think all that speaks truth, even though all that in the end feels a little too convenient for how they're able to find the boy and how all that comes together. I know they're making a second part. I'll be curious to see what they do with that and who becomes the next grabber. For all the Blumhouse films, all the low-budget horror films out there, this is definitely one of the best of recent years. I would encourage you check it out if you haven't. So that is a heavy 3.5 out of 5.